Welcome. Just super excited for today's session. You are joining River Networks in the Urban Water Learning Network session on investing in local leadership to advocate for equitable resilience. Before we even get started and pull up the slides, this meeting today is going to be interpreted in Spanish. So I want to invite our interpreters to come in, introduce themselves, and give us a little bit of best practices for today's session. Samantha, you want to?
Gracias, Diana. Buenas tardes. Esta reunión será interpretada simultáneamente al inglés y al español. Les pedimos por favor que nos ayuden a co-crear este espacio bilingüe, recordando hablar alto, claro y sobre todo despacio. Por favor, les pedimos que no usen acrónimos que no todos conozcan, sino que digan las palabras que buscan representar con ese acrónimo. Hablen por favor una persona a la vez. Si son bilingües, pueden quedarse en este canal. Pueden quedarse aquí sin tener que escoger un canal, más bien, o pueden escoger un canal, pero los pedimos por favor que hablen español en el canal de español, inglés en el canal de inglés. Y si ven que uno de los intérpretes alza la mano del emoji, es un recordatorio humilde de que hay que hablar un poco más despacio. Good afternoon, everyone. This meeting will be simultaneously interpreted into English and Spanish. We ask that you please help us co-create this bilingual space by remembering to speak loudly and clearly, and most importantly, slowly. We ask that you please not use acronyms that not everyone in the space is familiarized with, rather say each word that acronym seeks to represent. We ask that you please speak one person at a time. If you are bilingual, you do not, in English and Spanish, you do not have to choose a channel. You can stay in the main channel. We just ask that if you do choose a channel, that you speak Spanish into the Spanish channel and English into the English channel, so that we are not crossing each other on those interpretation channels. And if you see one of the interpreters raise their emoji hand, it is a gentle reminder to please speak more slowly. Para acceder a la interpretación en español, en un momento usted va a ver un globo terráqueo que va a aparecer en la parte inferior de su pantalla con un mensaje sobre la interpretación de idiomas. Haga clic en ese globo y elija el idioma en el que le gustaría participar y escuchar durante esta sesión. Si nos acompaña a través de su celular o su tableta, puede hacer clic en los 3 puntos en la esquina derecha de la parte baja de su pantalla, elija interpretación de idiomas y después seleccione su idioma. Asegúrese de hacer clic en finalizado y estaremos listos. Gracias. To access the interpretation in English, you are going to see a globe pop up in the lower part of your screen with a message about language interpretation. Go ahead and click on that globe and select the language in which you'd like to participate and listen during the session. If you're joining us through your smartphone or your tablet, you can click on the 3 dots on the bottom right corner of your screen, select language interpretation from that menu, and then choose your language. Always make sure to click on done and we'll be all set. Thank you so much, everyone.
All right, thank you. Gracias, Samantha. I'm going to go ahead and start the interpretation. You should see that globe at the bottom. So go ahead and choose the language channel. All right, thank you so much. And thank you to Samantha and to Hector, our interpreters. So let me just introduce myself. It's great to see some friendly faces here. My name is Diana Toledo. I am a Senior River Programs Director at River Network and am one of the coordinators of the Urban Waters Learning Network, which is sponsoring today's webinar. I am joined by a number of my colleagues here, including Jaleesa Gilmore, who's Groundwork USA's Senior Manager of Environmental Justice Programs. She's going to be moderating the Q&A. I've got Renee Mazurek, who is also helping on the back end, and Hannah Maiko, who's one of our presenters. Appreciate everybody staying on mute unless you're going to verbally come into the space to ask a question. We do have closed captioning. A number of you requested closed captioning, so just please note at the bottom of the band here, you can turn on the closed captioning, and you can also turn on in that button the transcription so that if the closed captioning is preventing you from seeing the slides, you can see the transcription happening side by side with the presenter slides. So just introducing myself, as I said, I am a Senior Director of River Programs. What that means is I lead a lot of our work on climate resilience at River Network. I am calling on from the traditional lands of Cherokee people in Western North Carolina, Asheville, North Carolina, and encourage you to introduce yourself into the chat. Would love to see who you are, where you're calling from, including your native lands. We're dropping in a link here if you're unfamiliar with the lands that you're occupying, the original dwellers of those lands. Please, we invite you to explore that. Yeah, just please come on into the chat space. Would love to see who else is here and what organizations you work with. Very excited to have you here. Hannah, if you would pull up the slides just real quickly. So what you have joined is now the third of a 6-part series, a webinar series we've been hosting as part of the Urban Waters Learning Network on investing local leadership to advocate for equitable climate resilience. This session is hosted by the Urban Waters Learning Network. If you want to go ahead, Hannah. And so if you're unfamiliar with the Urban Waters Learning Network, many of you, our members, are here today. We are a peer-to-peer network of both individuals and organizations that are working to conserve, to restore, and to revitalize the urban waterways in this country. And we support our members through training such as this, through tools, through mentoring, through financial assistance. So please take a look at that link if you're unfamiliar with the Learning Network. We'll have Renee, if you can drop in the, okay, I see, she dropped the link into the chat for the website. So we encourage you to explore and join the Learning Network. As I said, this is the third of its 6-part series that will go through January. We encourage you, and we're posting all of the recordings for these sessions. We'll upload that link as we close out today's session, and encourage you to register for next month's session, which is related to this. It's really focusing on tapping into community wisdom and knowledge to really promote equitable resilience. You want to go ahead? So we've got an amazing panel. I'm going to go ahead and introduce all the folks now and then just let them run with their presentations. Today's session is going to be kicked off by Hannah Maiko, who is part of our team at River Network. She is, she is the Resilient Communities Manager, and she works across the whole Great Lakes. She's based in Michigan and is working to build the capacity of organizations and leaders that are working for freshwater protection. She has experience in a variety of roles in environmental education and community outreach, and serves in a number of leadership positions in Grand Rapids. So she's going to kick us off. She is the author of a guide that we'll be sharing with you for how to design leadership development programs. Hannah will be followed by Jenny and Maria Jose. And some of our presenters are Spanish speakers. They'll be presenting in Spanish. So just to let you know that. So Jenny and Maria Jose are both coordinators of the Nuevas Voces program of the Winnesquataque River Watershed Council. Maria Jose was born in Bolivia. She has lived in the US for the last 4 years. She has a degree in Hotel and Tourism Administration and Higher Education from the Catholic University of Chile, and spent many years as a French teacher, French-Spanish interpreter. She is an interpreter herself. And since coming to the United States, she has founded the first international organization led by immigrants of her native Santa Cruz. It's called Damas Cívicas Cruceñas USA, which connects cruceñas, women from Santa Cruz de la Sierra in Bolivia, to engage in their own communities in the U.S. and advance projects that protect and serve the needs of vulnerable members of the communities in which they live today. She is going to be joined by Jenny. Jenny is Nicaraguan by origin, a Latina woman, a mother, a professional, a community leader in Providence, Rhode Island. She works in the healthcare field as a certified nursing assistant. And she is also the founder and director of a nonprofit organization, Hermandad por Nicaragua. It's a nonprofit that helps relocate Nicaraguans in the US and connects them to housing, education, and other services. Both Jenny and Maria Jose are graduates of the Nuevas Voces programs, and now they have stepped into leadership positions as coordinators of the program. So super excited to hear their perspective as both participants, community leaders that came into the environmental and climate space through that leadership program and now are helping lead the program itself. And then we're going to turn to the SEER Climate Ambassadors Program. So we're joined by Carmen Cabeza, who is the Climate Justice Community Organizer at SEER, the Coalition for Environment, Equity, and Resilience, based in Houston, Texas. Carmen is a medical graduate, also coming from the healthcare field, with extensive experience working with underserved communities. She has lived across many states in the United States and has been involved in efforts around environment and sustainability, and really came into the space from that healthcare perspective, understanding, looking at the connections that humans and industry are having on our natural ecosystems. She relocated to Houston just before Hurricane Harvey, and so was impacted by that event and saw some of the environmental justice challenges that presented to the community. And so through that came into being with SEER, who has done amazing work promoting climate justice in coastal Texas, and we'll share about that program. And she is joined by Mirtala Tristan, who is a graduate of that program. I've had the pleasure of working with Mirtala on different community advocacy campaigns. Mirtala has been a resident of Houston for over 45 years, was also personally impacted by Hurricane Harvey, and so became involved with SEER following that effort, and then also was impacted by Storm Uri. And so through the SEER program, and she'll share a little bit about that, starting to see the connections between local polluters, factories, trash dumps, landfills, and some of the air pollution and the health impacts on community members. And now is serving as an ambassador involved in various advocacy campaigns and helping others in her community really fight for better quality of life. So I am so excited to be joined by these amazing women. And I think just hopefully from the bios, you'll see that there's some of these leaders who have emerged through other efforts, who are founding their own organizations, and it's programs like the two we're going to hear about that are really bringing them into the environmental space. I think that's hugely inspirational. So before we turn it to Hannah, I do want to open up a poll. Renee, if you would pull that one up. We want to understand a little bit about how all of you are coming into this space and into this work. And so you'll see a poll. If you could take a minute to check the right box for what is your affiliation, what organization type are you part of? And also at the bottom, the question of what is your experience building local leadership for advocacy, so we can get a sense of the experience in the room. So I see folks the polls are starting to come in. We've got almost half of respondents. All right, are we close here? They're still trickling in. Let me call it down. Got 3. We're going to close it at 0, 3, 2, 1. Go ahead and close the poll, Renee. Boy, we've got a lot of a really diverse, well-balanced group. We've got about a quarter of you are either community-based organizational, nonprofit, local, county, or state government, and federal government, with also a smattering of academia and private sector. It's great to see all of you here representing these different perspectives. And yeah, this is great. I know little to nothing about a quarter, 20% of you, and a lot of folks wanting to learn more. Well, this is great. Thank you. Just want to encourage from whatever perspective you're bringing in particular, and I want to speak to some of our folks in local or state or federal government here. As many of our government programs and agencies aim to center community in their programming and in their funding, I encourage you to think about the role that investing in leadership development at the community level can really have in making sure that our programs and our initiatives are responsive to community needs. So welcome all of you here, and please, let's make this be the start of a conversation. So with that, Hannah, I'll turn it to you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Having a little bit of a lag on the slideshow advancing. There we go. Okay, hello all, and thank you for joining us today. And Deanna, thank you for the introduction. As Deanna said, my name is Hannah. I work with River Network as the Resilient Communities Manager, and I'm based out of Grand Rapids, Michigan, which is the occupied land of the Anishinaabe. And really excited to be joining and sharing about this work. Deanna mentioned earlier that I had the privilege of authoring a toolkit about community leadership development. And it is part one of a two-part series that we created focused on tools for equitable climate resilience. So on the slide, you can see both of our tools here. Fostering community leadership is the one that we'll be discussing today, but it is a companion to fostering community-led research and knowledge, which we have an upcoming session on. These tools are really important pieces of the puzzle of equitably engaging communities in decision-making, and really elevating community knowledge at the decision-making tables that folks have traditionally been left out of. And Deanna gave such a good context for why these are important as we're having, oh, sorry, Sam, as we are having more funding and more opportunities to engage communities. We want to make sure that we're doing so in a way that causes the least amount of harm and elevates the most amount of local expertise. So I will be talking through a little bit about what the toolkit contains, and then talking about how River Network has supported some groups with developing their own leadership programs, before turning it over to our friends who are going to talk through their own programs today as well. So the Fostering Community Leadership Toolkit really makes the case for leadership development programs as critical components of resilience. In the toolkit, I actually refer to leadership development as infrastructure, as critical infrastructure for building sustainable communities and making sure that communities are resilient and responsive to climate change, but also to all other kinds of issues that folks are experiencing, whether it's housing or healthcare. So while this tool is focused on climate resilience, it's also containing a lot of case studies and knowledge that are applicable to intersectional issues as well. In the toolkit, we highlight over 20 programmatic case studies from across the country. And just as this tool is trying to focus and engage communities and elevate expertise, we decided to turn to partners across our network and engage them in the authoring of this toolkit. So I had the privilege to interview program managers and coordinators from across the country to develop the case studies and to pull information that we know has been tested and is really successful in building community leadership. Part of this toolkit as well provides kind of a step-by-step guide and checklist for building a community leadership program. So if you're one of the folks who responded to the poll that we just launched, that you're looking to learn more, or that you are looking to build a program yourself, this guide does contain a really good roadmap for doing so, with a lot of suggestions about equitable and inclusive practices around programming. And many of those practices came directly from the programs that are featured here as case studies. So that tool is available. I think Renee might be sharing the link to that in the chat. I can't see the chat at the moment, so I hope that that's been dropped in there so that you all can view that. So benefits of community leadership development. We really lean into these programs to achieve equitable representation, which we all know and have seen in some cases leads to equitable outcomes for communities. Once again, making sure that the right folks are at the tables where decisions are being made about what happens to them and their families and their greater communities. We also oh, sorry. I think I heard some of the interpretation come through. We also see that some of the benefits include creating really effective coalitions with more diverse expertise being brought into those decision-making processes as well. A big piece of this puzzle as well is moving towards meaningful civic engagement or civic engagement. And that being said, you know, a lot of folks are rightfully disinvested in some of our civic engagement processes, and finding ways to make those more intentional and more effective for people if they're going to take time to invest in civic engagement, that they actually see good outcomes from that investment. A really big piece of this as well was seeing multi-generational community engagement as a piece of a lot of these programs. So not only turning to folks who are already of voting age or already engaged in a profession, but also engaging youth so that we have a good funnel of leaders moving into positions. Additionally, making sure that we're pulling on the expertise and the knowledge of elders in our communities to inform decisions being made so that we have really inclusive outcomes. And as we were doing a lot of these interviews to develop this toolkit, we started taking note of all of the formal as well as informal leadership positions that folks can assume. There are programs that might prescribe an outcome for a participant who has gone through the program that they perhaps are serving in a specific role, but many of the programs that we include as case studies have a really open-ended outcome where folks can choose a role that feels comfortable and accessible for them. So we've seen folks use these programs who have gone on to become elected officials and run for an office. We have seen folks join a board or a commission to sit at those formal decision-making tables. We have seen folks join their nonprofit board of directors, become active volunteers, become a local advocate and get involved in policy. And we also see folks acting as neighborhood ambassadors and informants, making sure that they are the trusted source of information in their community so that people can make good decisions when they either go to vote or participate in another activity. So a really broad spectrum of leadership positions where folks can engage in that and be leaders in their own right and with their own expertise. I just included here a sample of a table that's in the leadership toolkit that talks through different methods that are utilized in some of these programs. We often see, especially with adult learning and adult training, that we have to use lots of different approaches to meet everyone's learning needs. So these programs might be dispatching lots of different techniques like classroom style learning, taking field trips, doing projects, going out into the community and doing hands-on practice of things like giving testimony or attending a commission meeting. They might be engaging in mentoring or alumni networks. So lots of different ways that we can engage folks in this training. And often it's good to use more than one as we're developing these programs to meet everyone's learning needs where they are. And then this last slide here is just to kind of talk about what River Network has been doing. So since publishing this toolkit in 2020, we have supported 3 cohorts of organizations in developing leadership development programs. And on the map, you can see those green circles are representing where those organizations are. And those programs have taken on a lot of different forms. Some of them have been really focused on water and climate. Some of them have been more open-ended, so folks can choose what kinds of topics they're most interested in and how they want to utilize their training. But the goal and the outcome of all of them was creating confident, effective leaders who were leading in their own right in their communities. When River Network supports these organizations, we have been able to offer a small grant toward that organization's planning and development work, as well as our own staff time as technical assistants to help develop these programs. Oftentimes when I've been supporting, my support has been contributed to developing curriculum, helping engage an advisory board to inform the outcomes of the program, helping come up with recruitment strategies to actually invite community members to participate. But we have lots of technical expertise that we can offer alongside our regranting program so that these organizations can plan and develop a program and then ideally pilot it with us. And then the last step of that process is usually helping the organizations find sustainable funding to carry that work forward. The two purple circles on this map just represent where our partners are from who are presenting with us today. So there's a purple circle in Rhode Island to represent Woonasquatucket River Watershed Council and Nuevas Voces. And there's a purple circle down there by Houston, Texas as well. So just to kind of show how we're geographically reaching folks as well. So with that, I will pause. If there are any questions for me, I'll answer them towards the end of the presentation. But I would love to turn things over to Jenny and Maria Jose to present about Nuevas Voces.
Thank you, Hannah. How are you, everyone? Thank you for being here today. My name is Jenny. My colleague is here with Miss Maria Jose. We want to invite you to share we're going to share our work that we do at Nuevas Voces here in Providence, Rhode Island. So we're investing in local leadership to advocate for equitable climate resilience. Next slide, please. This is briefly a biography from me and Maria Jose, but Diana already introduced us, so would like to get to the next slide, please. So at the Woonasquatucket Watershed Council, we have a mission, and you can see it in the screen. Our mission is to create positive environmental, social, and economic change by revitalizing the Woonasquatucket River and the greenways and their communities. You can see our map at the Woonasquatucket Treated Water Council. We are located, our key work is the lower part of the watershed in Providence, where the river has been more historically degraded where most folks in the state live, like myself and Maria Jose. Next, please. And this map also shows how many residents live in Olneyville, and Olneyville is a densely settled targeted community for climate and change issues like flooding and the urban heat island. And the green that you see with the star is our where we're located in Olneyville. Next, please. This is another map where you can see the demographic details of Olneyville and Providence, specifically how many is population by race. So like I said in my previous slide, Olneyville is a really diverse community, and also we have we are so we're frontliners for various climate change. Next slide. And you can see it in here, back, I don't know, some of you guys remember, or back in 2020, we had a big flooding. 2010, correct, yes, 2010. So I used to, so Olneyville, there's two pictures here where you can see that it was really flooded due to the big rain that we had in 2010. There's a shopping center where our office is located, and you can see it's super flooded. There's also damage on the bridge that took 2 years to rebuild. This was the major hit in Olneyville communities, and we knew we wanted community members to feel empowered and prepared for future flooding events. Next, please. So our project goals for the WWC was to create and cultivate engaged climate resilience. We wanted to build climate justice literacy. We wanted to develop leadership capacity, and we wanted frontline residents to be our core governments. We saw how deeply impacted Olneyville community was, and many of priority environmental issues, and that turned into work action, and we bring nuevas voces into the water table. Next, please. And here you can see our initial surveys. The WWC decided to do a survey and started door knocking, canvassing, both bilinguals in English and Spanish. And we wanted people from the community to know what we wanted to do in regards of all the variety of climate things that's going on in the community. And you can see in the pictures, we have residents knocking on doors and finalizing the surveys. Next. Our initial results was that some of the questions that we had here was how much do the people in Olneyville knew about climate change? As you can see, 63% say yes, 28% not sure, and 9% they said no. So we also had questions about what kind of risk we have here in Olneyville, and some of them identify flooding, some extreme waters, illness like flu and fever, and some of the disasters that was going on in our neighborhood. Next, please. And here you can see a video of one of our members. And this is a video that you guys could watch on your own time. And they discuss about how Olneyville was so vulnerable to flooding. So please, when you get a minute, you could also go back and check and watch this video. And now I'm gonna introduce you my colleague, María José.
Buenas tardes a todos, mucho gusto. Tengo el agrado de empezar a presentarles nuestro programa que se llama Nuevas Voces. Te están pidiendo, perdón, me están pidiendo que pasemos el link del video.
Okay.
Bueno, voy a presentar a dos personas. Bueno, la primera, Delia Rodríguez Mazjuán, que es la persona por la cual nosotras hemos conocido el programa de Nuevas Voces en el año 2020. Somos graduadas del 2021 y ella es una inmigrante argentina que trabaja hace muchos años por los derechos de la comunidad. Es una personalidad en la radio y es quien ha podido introducirnos en este programa.
Also, Jennifer Recinos is one of our cohort members. Oh, okay, perdón. So, Jennifer Recinos es una de las participantes también de Nuevas Voces en el cohort members del 2020. Ella creció en Olneyville, es de Guatemala y actualmente es una de las representantes del board members aquí en la Cuenca del Río.
Siguiente. Next slide. Next, please. Tenemos en el programa en el que se inició con la graduación del año 2021, 20 miembros en la corte inicial, donde estábamos presentes mi colega Jenny, nuestra coordinadora actual del programa, Miosotis Alsina, que se encuentra presente en la reunión, y mi persona, María José. Originalmente fuimos 20 personas graduadas. Teníamos el servicio de interpretación y traducción. también teníamos el servicio de transportación y cuidado de niños. Teníamos también el apoyo tecnológico y digital. Recibimos laptops para poder asistir a las clases, que en ese entonces era época de pandemia, entonces nos tocaba nuestras primeras clases de manera digital a través de Zoom. Y también había una compensación de $25 la hora. La mayoría de nuestras actividades fueron digital, pero al final sí pudimos tener algunas actividades en persona. Siguiente. Next, please. Entonces, en Nuevas Voces, la misión es crear conciencia respecto al medio ambiente, dando conocimiento histórico, científico y ambiental de nuestra comunidad para entender y tomar acciones para su protección y conservación y que las siguientes generaciones puedan seguir disfrutando de su medio ambiente. Siguiente. Para poder lograr este objetivo, esta misión, tenemos varios objetivos, que es crear conciencia sobre los problemas locales, que las personas que son parte de la corte tengan un conocimiento y puedan luego aprender a discutir respecto a temas ambientales en base a sus necesidades, construir conexiones o lazos dentro de la comunidad a través de sus propios recursos y desarrollar sus habilidades y oportunidades de liderazgo. Next. Este programa de Nuevas Voces tiene como mínimo 8 sesiones de temas que son importantes para la comunidad, pero en realidad hacemos mucho más de 8 sesiones, ya que tenemos un grupo de sesiones teóricas, es decir, en clases dentro de un aula, y las otras sesiones están fuera de aula y que son actividades al aire libre, pero también nacen a través de ellos 2 programas más que son el Speakers Programs, es decir, donde hacemos pequeñas conferencias para informar a la comunidad sobre diferentes oportunidades que ellos pueden tener, tanto para poder adquirir no solamente conocimientos, sino oportunidades laborales. Y también tenemos los que son Mergers Programs, porque gracias a Nuevas Voces también tenemos un siguiente paso que es Campeones, que más adelante voy a hablar un poco más a detalle de ello. Y entonces hay temas que nosotros podemos unir para que todos puedan estar preparados y tener una misma información. Se les enseña sobre lo que es el cambio climático y, como decía mi colega Jenny, se les enseña también a cómo manejar un kit de emergencias, qué es la justicia ambiental, cómo funciona el sistema político para saber dónde estamos nosotros parados en este sistema y cómo poder organizarnos como comunidad y poder ser los nuevos líderes y llevar nuestras voces a los consejos, a los políticos, para que se puedan, a través de nuestras necesidades, hacer leyes comunitarias. Siguiente presentación. Next slide, please. Y aquí hay un ejemplo de una de las clases, como ustedes pueden ver. La siguiente, por favor. Igualmente mantenemos tenemos 2 formas de poder dar compensación a los estudiantes. Ellos pueden elegir ya sea una tarjeta de regalo o pago en cheque, $25 la hora. Y entonces se deja claro cuál es la manera en que ellos pueden recibir su dinero y ellos tienen la opción de elegir, ¿no? Y siguiente. Next slide, please. Thank you. También le damos un apoyo a los estudiantes que sobre todo en su mayoría son madres de familia. Entonces tenemos el cuidado de niños donde nosotros también a los niños les podemos hacer actividades recreativas y también pueden aprender un poco sobre el medio ambiente e incluso participar en algunas de las clases. Y a las personas que cuidan a los niños también se les da una compensación de $25 la hora y se las prepara para que puedan atender a los niños. Next slide. Respecto a comunicarnos con los estudiantes de nuestras clases, tenemos diferentes formas de comunicación, ya sea por llamadas telefónicas antes de cada clase, para hacerles recuerdos o asistencia, para aclarar dudas, y se les hace también un envío de texto o también ya sea por WhatsApp, que es la plataforma más utilizada por la comunidad latina, que en su mayoría son los que participan de nuestros programas. Next slide, please. Okay. Le paso la palabra a Jenny.
Thank you so much, Maria Jose. As you can see in this picture, we also have a good relationship with our officials, electors, community members, and we have a variety of programs participants. Next, please. And on the next slide, you can see our cohort members for 2020. Our activity consisted in door knocking and find out what the community wanted. And it's our duty as a community to keep the neighborhood informed about all the changes around our neighborhood. So we were pleased and happy to knock knocking on the doors. And that way we give our cohort members the power to feel more comfortable within the community, and that way they could build the leadership. Next slide, please. In this picture, you can see our graduation. You can see Maria Jose and Miss Yoti and some of our cohort members. We had the opportunity to have our graduation in person, and many official members came to our graduation, like the Major Elorza and the Office of Sustainability, and the RJC that they were here today, that day in the presentation and graduation. Please, next. So our cohort member was the 2020. And as the result of the year one, we were able to transfer in power within our cohort members. And we were happy to have 2 new voices graduated, facilitating our voices, which is me and Maria Jose. We also had not graduate appointed to represent ONIVE in the Providence Human Relations Commission, which this was great. She spoke Spanish, so she was a representative for our community. We have another graduate that led the ONIVE Community Association. We had another graduate that is our community program director, which is Mio. And we have future graduates return to our program, which now they are part of the Campeones, and we had another representative working at the environmental educator, and we have 2 members as board members and staff actively working with Nuevas Voces. Next, please.
Bueno, voy a seguir hablando respecto a otro programa que vendría a ser un paso más adelante de Nuevas Voces, que es un poco más especializado en todo lo que es aprendizaje sobre sistemas de cambios climáticos y cómo se puede trabajar para mitigar los daños, como por ejemplo sistemas de ingeniería para evitar la erosión que puede llevar nuestro río que atraviesa la ciudad, como es el río Woonasquatucket. Next slide, please. Entonces aquí estamos con Marc Pereira, que es el ingeniero civil de nuestro consejo de la cuenca del río Woonasquatucket, y él ahí nos está explicando en una clase cómo funciona la ingeniería para la restauración y cómo es que somos resilientes a este cambio climático gracias a estos sistemas de mitigación de daños. Next slide, please. Yo creo que es siguiente. Bueno, aquí una de las fotografías que nos tocó estar en el frío, viendo al aire libre toda la estructura de ingeniería en una de las áreas de mayor trabajo, donde también se puede ver el trabajo comunitario, y es un área pública. Next, please. Y bueno, ahí uno de los lugares donde hay mucho más erosión, por donde pasa el río, hace una curva y daña ciertas áreas urbanas dentro de la ciudad de Providence, en el barrio de Olneyville. Next, please.
Yep.
Ujú.
Yeah. Okay.
Y con eso acabamos. Y bueno, eso sería nuestra presentación en general. Muchas
Muchísimas
gracias.
gracias. Thank you so much, Jenny and Maria Jose. Want to
you so
encourage everybody to drop questions into the chat, and just real quickly, let me turn it over to Carmen. Hannah, if you could pull up her slide. There you go. Carmen, thank you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, and greetings from the native ancestral lands of the Sana, Atacapa, and Kanawana peoples. We honor their lives and sacrifices to the place we call Houston today. So I'm gonna talk about the Climate Ambassador Program and how this program came to be part in, like the backbone of SEER Climate Justice Campaign. Next. So SEER, for those of you who are not familiar with, is a coalition of 27 nonprofit members that came together after Harvey. Harvey was an event of historical proportion and impacted mostly the people on the front lines of climate crisis. So with that, these nonprofit groups, they were filling the gap that the government was not providing assistance at the rate that it was needed. And they came into conclusion that they need to work together to be able to be more effective. So that's how SEER was born. As a coalition, we are 27 members, but as a staff, we are only 6 people. So sometimes people think like, oh, SEER has this huge team. No, we are 6. And as a coalition, we lead 3 campaigns, and climate justice is one of those 3 campaigns. And I'm the one leading this campaign. Next. So this is the overview of my campaign. It has 4 main components. And like you can see right now here on red is the 2 community programs. They are the basis of this campaign. The main component of this, the platform where we co-design and gather feedback to community in general, is the Northeast community meeting that we held every month. And the climate ambassadors are part of that meeting, but also are the ones connecting and reaching out to community members. We have, as part of this Northeast community meeting, another initiative that took off, which is to put together a disaster shelter / resiliency hub. It was in us from community. Mirtala was really involved in this initiative. We have health partners helping us educate another providers and pushing them to become advocates in this climate crisis. And then we have the policy solution, which is the home retrofit program. And the navigators now are under this 4-pillar. Next. So the climate ambassadors really develop organically. During the planning period, we kind of determine the area that we want to work and have kind of plan of how we want to move forward, educating and gather information with community. But then the pandemic hit, and we were at the point that is like, how are we going to move forward this work, right? So I was new also in this space, like Diana presented. I came from the healthcare industry. I have no experience as an organizer. And then the pandemic hit, and I really thought I couldn't do this work. So the way that I find out to move the work forward, it was recruiting residents. I started being in every community event and during the pandemic, and I built those relationships, and then I invite them to work with me. And that's how this program came to be. We hire 12 residents. They were compensated through stipends. They help us co-design a survey to really educate the community. Because when I start talking about climate change, the first person that I talk to, she say, lady, I don't know anything about climate change, but let me tell you, we're dying of cancer. So right there, I knew that it's like, I just couldn't push the conversation of climate change into a community that it was just dealing with COVID, right? So having the help of the ambassadors design this type of questions that we're gonna ask, we use it to educate, to really help community make those connections about how everything that the community was experiencing, it will get worse with climate change. Next. So the program grew, and then we end up taking the ambassadors to testify to Austin and teaching them about the power that our elected officials had, and teaching them about power structures. Next. So we came to a crossroads when we presented our proposal for implementation of our plan. And we asked ambassadors, you know, how do you feel with this program? Would you like to continue working with us? And this is what we hear. They were really eager to learn more. They wanted to continue working with us. So we have to really redesign the program and revisit our strategy to see how best can we work together. Because like I say, that was not something that it was planned originally, and it was as a result of the pandemic. So we needed to kind of come up with more structure. Next. So this is Sears' theory of change, and we revisit this when we brought the structure to the program. Sears recognizes residents as an expert. Communities on the front lines of climate change have the solutions to the problems, and the community voices need to be at the decision making. So with that, we integrate this into how we wanted to structure the ambassador program. Next. And in creating this structure, we use this model of leadership. So we have volunteers, we have members, and then from there, these members, ambassadors, we start moving them forward into the leadership ladder. And this is a way to provide more tools. We recognize that the ambassadors that we hired to work with us are already leaders in the community. However, they didn't have the tools or the confidence to step up and talk. So this is part of what we do, teaching them about how they can use their voice, how can the tools that we provide help them to move forward and expand the message within the networks. Because without really the ambassadors, I couldn't move forward this work. They were the ones who connect me and really brought this information in this education to the community. So our Northeast community meetings start growing based on the ambassadors' connections. Next. So we came up also with an agreement of how we would like to work together. And this is also making the connections, so what to expect in the program, but also the expectations of the role, because being a SEER ambassador is also putting our name out there. So there's certain things that we would like to kind of the ambassadors to uphold, and we went over this contract with them. Next. And then we started training. We went back to what is our campaign and what are the goals and what we want to achieve, and try to break down in a way that they can see the bigger picture of what is the work that we were doing and how that connect with the bigger picture of what we want to achieve at the long term. Next. So we provide training on how they can talk to elected officials, how they can talk to other people. We provide sketches about what is an elevator speech, and we give them talking points when they need to talk to somebody about how climate change is impacting their health. Next. And we do this very interactive. We use a lot of scenarios, and we do like one-on-ones with them to practice so they can build the confidence. Next. And part of the training, it was to make them understand that we don't need to talk to everybody in the community, right? That was the first mistake that I made when I just got hired. They're like, oh my God, I need to get all these people into this climate change education. And that put a lot of pressure on you, right? So that's why we break it down, and it's like, no, we want you to go over this a sphere of influence, so you can see the people who gonna listen to you as a messenger is the people who are close to you. And from there, you start growing your sphere of influence, right? Next. And we also train them about what it is building power and how we can move people who are opponents or neutrals and where can we invest our energy. Next. So, and from these, we are creating a new program. So some of the ambassadors graduated as ambassadors and then moving forward with being a navigator. And this is another program that we are creating for our policy solution. We are working on a home retrofit program, which is trying to reinvent the patchwork programs that the city had and remove the barriers for people to access to resources to fix their home and to make their home more energy efficient. So some of the ambassadors are right now are navigators, and some ambassadors, they have double role, like Myrtala is an ambassador who continue engaging the community about climate change, but also is going to be a navigator. And this role is a liaison between community and the program, so to make sure that nobody falls through the cracks. They also going to help us develop what the process is going to look like. We're going to invite community members in these focus groups to really learn from them. What are the barriers to access of those federal money, and see how can we make this program more friendly and more human, so people don't feel like they're talking to case managers that they don't understand their case. Next. So the Navigator program is another collaborative that we are part of. And one of the major players in this collaborative is HARC, which is Houston Advanced Research Center. This is a big research institution in Houston that when we start working together, I have to really slow them down and say, you know, they're not going to understand this word. These words that you use in this language is too technical. We spent a lot of time, Margaret Cook and I, to really put together messaging for her to work with us. And she became really close to the ambassadors. And she shared with me that the way that we work together has shaped the programs and how SEER write their proposals. So this is the impact of some of these collaboratives, that they are very technical. They're scientists that they're accustomed to write these huge grants, and they were coming to the community with just a plan to work with them, right? Not with the approach of how can we build something together. So working with SEER have really shaped how she approached this work, and she had influenced all the proposal that she's doing at HARC. So with them, we're getting into this program. Our role is to recruit 10 residents as the community navigators, that they're gonna help us co-design this program. And they're gonna be also participating in how we design the marketing and how we're gonna engage communities. So this is based on lessons learned from the ambassador program that we already had at SEER. Next. So again, they're gonna be liaisons for residents to engage and participate in the design. Next. So in addition to being the liaisons, they're gonna receive a specialized training so they know what they're talking about, right? They're gonna learn what exactly a home retrofit program is, what is weatherization, what is deferred maintenance, energy burden. So all those puzzle pieces that they're going to be included in this program, so they can really educate community to what to expect when you try to participate in this program and what is going to be the process like. Next. And with that, I'm going to pass the floor to Myrtala.
Hola. Sí me escuchan, ¿verdad? Sí. Mi nombre es Mirtala Tristán, latina, una latina que no sabe todavía mucho inglés, pero es mucho lo que entiendo de inglés. Soy una residente de Houston, Texas, pues por más de 45 años. La razón por la que yo estoy involucrada con CIR es porque fui afectada terriblemente por el huracán Harvey. Tiempo después pasamos por la tormenta invernal Uri, que afectó mucho a mi comunidad. El ser embajadora de CIR me ha empoderado y me siento protegida y orgullosa porque ahora tengo el privilegio de ser una navegadora para ayudar a nuestra gente y seguir luchando para tener una mejor calidad de vida. ¿Qué he aprendido yo a decir? He aprendido las conexiones que hay entre la contaminación y el aire, las fábricas y los vertideros de basura que afectan nuestras comunidades y nuestra
Mirtala,
salud.
perdón que interrumpa. Can you put the next slide, please?
Okay.
Ana, can you put the next slide? There, thank you.
Correcto. Yo he aprendido a decir las conexiones que hay entre la contaminación en el aire y fábricas y vertideros de basura que afectan a nuestras comunidades y nuestra salud. Y hablar de cómo vivir al frente del cambio climático. Las consecuencias de la inundación de mi comunidad durante Harvey, problemas para acceder a recursos como fondos de FEMA, solar y energía eficiente.
Next.
¿Cómo trabajo con los latinos? Es difícil conectar los problemas del cambio climático con los latinos. Las comunidades latinas son usadas como basureros por las refinerías y carreteras. Y en estas comunidades van a sufrir más con el incremento de gases. A nosotros los latinos nos hace reaccionar, multar a las industrias que nos contaminan y conectar los gastos de renta, recibos, de colegio, comida y sobre todo la salud. Trabajando, resolviendo pobreza y contaminación. Probado, mensajes que funcionen y sobre todo animar y educar a más latinos para que se involucren con nosotros. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Mirtala. And this is our contact information. And just to kind of wrap up really quick, the funds for covering this program is from Kresge, and half of the grant goes to this covering this program. And the lessons learned is that you need to invest in the communities. Building relationships takes time. So sometimes people try to rush it, and it doesn't work that way. You need to put the time to really get those connections to really move forward the work. And something else is like no more free volunteering. People need to eat. We get paid to do this work, and just asking community to participate just as a volunteer, it doesn't work anymore. They need to be compensated. So those are some of the lessons learned that we have had during this program. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much to all of our presenters. It was really great hearing about your work. So we're going to kick off the Q&A now. Feel free to drop any questions you have in the chat. And so the first question we have, I believe, was for Hannah. And there was a question about, have you included earlyhood child education in coalition building? Have you had partnerships with them? And I guess, what does that look like? Or what has that looked like?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So in the toolkit, we do feature a number of programs that are specific to youth. There are a couple in there out of, if I'm remembering correctly, Atlanta, North Carolina, and then here in Michigan, where I live, that are youth focused. And really focused on that multi-generational approach of connecting youth with folks already in leadership positions. And, you know, as you heard folks talking about today, creating that pipeline of informed, confident, effective community members, not necessarily priming youth to run for office or sit on a board, but making sure that they're informed, that they're actively participating in decision making, and that they know how to get more resources or pursue opportunities beyond that. My background is in environmental education. So as I was investigating a lot of the case studies for this toolkit, I had to challenge myself to step outside of the traditional education realm and into more, I guess, technical skill building or capacity building instead of just information transfer, and really focusing on some of those pieces. But there are definitely networks of youth alumni from some of these programs focused on climate resilience that are gathering at large summits. The program featured in Atlanta, they host an annual summit for their youth to come gather year after year to continue sharing what they're doing, projects they're working on, topics they're interested in. So in that sense, it almost is a coalition of young advocates who have been trained up through these programs. Does that answer the question well, or any follow-up there? Okay.
I think so, Hannah. Thanks. And I'd like to, if our other panelists have anything to add around like youth development for community leadership, I invite you to share as well. Okay, so I'll move to the next question. So this was a question from the audience. As a government employee, how can I better reach Spanish-speaking communities, specifically when promoting opportunities for public input? They would love to hear any tips from your experience or from the presenters, as this is a significant initiative my agency is working to improve on. So yeah, how would a government agency, what is some strategies or best practices for them to reach a Spanish-speaking community? And that's open to all of our panelists to answer.
I can start, if that's okay. First of all, the engagement has to be based on either tapping into leaders who work in that community or nonprofits that they have the trust of the community. A lot of the times they came with a plan, again, that is already done. And it's just, that's not really, seems like an honest approach to collaborate. It just seems like a check the box, right? So you have to really plan how you're going to be approaching. You have to be materials that they're at the level of the community that you're going to be trying to reach. You have to translate all the documents because that's another thing that we see is like, how do we reach this community? And the materials are just in English, right? So you also need to pay attention. What is the level of literacy in technology? Because this is a big problem in communities, low-income communities. So you have to tailor your message to your audience and also how you're going to be reaching out. So those are some of the things, but come with the approach of how can we build something together? Don't bring the agenda because you already had built the agenda and you already have plans of how you roll it out. Come with the idea and how you ask for support and for feedback to really put together an agenda that it may work.
Thank you, Carmen. Oh, Hannah, did you have something to add?
Yeah, Carmen said something that reminded me of a situation I recently have been navigating. Carmen, you said the word literacy, and I think mostly referring to language access. but also the component of literacy that is the ability to read and write, which can be really variable, especially if you're working with communities of immigrants. So recently, I was challenged in some of the technical assistance that I'm offering to navigate creating program materials, not in another language, but in a way that doesn't require someone to read the written word. And that being an inclusivity component as well that you might come across, and just being prepared for that if it comes up is a really important piece of the puzzle that I am learning right now.
Yeah, thank you, Hannah, for bringing that up too. And I guess this kind of goes to my next question. I feel like we're already starting to talk about language justice and disability access. But so how do you really ensure that your community leadership programs prioritize and promote equity, especially for vulnerable populations within the context of climate resilience and water equity? And we can come back to that question. I think I have another one that may be less, we have to really think deeply about that. And I think you all kind of touched on it in your presentation.
I can touch on something, but I just want to give other presenters the opportunity to, but if they don't have anything, I can just add. Recently, I add a blind person to the Climate Ambassador program. And I'm going to be honest, I was not completely ready for that. So it's just, you need to be intentional to everything that you do. You have to do the extra step, right? We asked them to go to an event to support. He volunteered, and I was like, I cannot just send the direction, right? So it's like, how are we going to include him? So either we had another ambassador pick him up, or we pay for Uber. Now, the materials, I have to be really specific of how I communicate with him, because I send he has a software, and I'm just talking about one particular example, right? But I just send a presentation, and then he called me like, Carmen, my software doesn't read presentation because they just tell me pictures. So now I have to be more creative. It's like, okay, now I have to put everything in a Word document, so his software is able to read everything. So when I meet with him for the training, he's gonna be prepared. So you have to be intentional when you're gonna be focusing on a vulnerable population. What are the needs? You need to learn what are the needs of the population that you wanna include in this type of work, right? How being more vulnerable, you need to dedicate extra time or extra resources to really reach and be prepared to help. Because other than that, you're gonna take something that you are not prepared. And again, this community are the ones even left behind the rest of the community, right? So you need to either build a list of people in your community that you know that they're more vulnerable, so you check on them and make sure that they are bringing into either disaster plan information, making sure that you have designated people who are going to be reaching out to them.
Thank you so much, Carmen. And Jenny and Maria, do you have a question? I mean, a response?
Nos gustaría participar con una respuesta porque tenemos la experiencia. En el caso nuestro, tenemos de la comunidad latinoamericana, tenemos personas que no saben leer y escribir. Sin embargo, como les dijimos, tenemos clases que son en aula, son teóricas, pero tratamos de hacerlas con dinámicas aplicables a la vida cotidiana, con un lenguaje sencillo que se puede entender. Aún así, cada persona lleva su documento por escrito, porque siempre hay una persona que le puede ayudar a leerlo, ese documento, además que lo desarrollamos en clases. Pero también nos apoyamos con una actividad también al aire libre, y como les decía, lo ponemos en práctica y las personas pueden romper el hielo respecto a la timidez o por la falta de capacidad que pueda tener la persona de desenvolverse fácilmente, y se integran con nosotros, y hemos logrado que esas personas puedan concluir el programa de principio a fin.
Thank you so much, Maria, Jose, and Jenny. I think that's super important to have different types of ways for people to engage. So we're at time. So before we go, we're going to pull up a poll for everyone. And I just want to say thank you again to our presenters and for all of our participants. And yes, please answer the poll. And we look forward to seeing you at the next webinar.
Thank you, everybody. Renee was going to drop in, if you could, the evaluation form, please. And also just know the slides from today and the recording will be posted on that website. She'll also drop that link again, where you can also register for the next session. And our next session is, Hannah, if you want to advance, go ahead. Oh yeah, there it is. Centering those at risk, the power of community-led research for climate resilience investments. We do hope that, glad to see many of you responding to the poll. We're hoping to facilitate conversations after these sessions with others who can learn from one another around equitable climate resilience. So hoping to see many of you there. Thank you. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Carmen and Mirtala. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Maria Jose. Really appreciate you sharing your work, and thank you all for making time to be here today. So hopefully we'll see you all next month at the next session.
Thank you for having us.
Have a wonderful afternoon, everybody.
Muchas
Thank
gracias a
you.
ustedes por la oportunidad. Saludos a todos.
Saludos.
Hasta luego.